How do you rebuild a relationship with a daughter who learned to stop expecting you to come home? What words can bridge 20 years of missed birthdays, school plays, and bedtime stories? Can a mother who mastered the art of strategic warfare ever learn the more delicate battle of earning forgiveness? When duty to country conflicts with duty to family, is there ever truly a winner? The coffee shop in downtown Portland buzzed with the usual morning crowd, but Commander Mary Thompson sat rigid in her corner booth, checking her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. Her daughter Sarah was late, though punctuality had never been her strong suit. Mary remembered countless mornings when 8-year-old Sarah would drag her feet getting ready for school, while Mary stood by the door in full uniform, mentally calculating how many minutes she could spare before her morning briefing. At 58, Mary still carried herself with military precision, her graying hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, her civilian clothes pressed and orderly. But her hands betrayed her nervousness, fingers drumming against the ceramic mug in a rhythm that matched her accelerated heartbeat. 3 years of retirement hadn't diminished her tactical awareness, but it had given her something she'd never had during her active service. Time to think about what she'd lost. The door chimed, and Sarah entered, scanning the room before her eyes landed on Mary. At 32, Sarah had inherited her mother's sharp features and determined jaw, but where Mary's posture spoke of military discipline, Sarah's slouched shoulders and defensive stance told a different story. She approached the table with the wariness of someone who had learned early that hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Mom," Sarah said, sliding into the opposite seat without removing her jacket. The word felt formal, distant, like a title rather than a term of endearment. "Sarah, thank you for coming." Mary's voice carried the same measured tone she'd used in briefing rooms, though she was trying to soften it. "You look well." "Doi." Sarah's response was sharp. "Because I've been better. We need to talk about Dad." Mary felt her stomach tighten. She'd known this conversation was coming since Robert's funeral 6 months ago, but knowing and being prepared were different things. "What about him?" "About the fact that he raised me alone for most of my childhood while you were playing soldier halfway around the world." Sarah's eyes flashed with an anger that had been building for decades. "About the fact that he never once complained, never once made you look like the bad guy, even when you missed my graduation because of some classified mission that was more important than your own daughter." Mary's training kicked in instinctively. Assess the situation, identify the threat, develop a strategy. But this wasn't a military operation, and the person across from her wasn't an enemy combatant. This was her daughter, and the wounds she was treating were self-inflicted. "I was serving my country," Mary said quietly. "The missions I was on saved lives." "Whose lives?" Sarah's voice rose slightly, causing nearby patrons to glance over. "Because it sure as hell wasn't mine. Do you know what it's like to explain to your friends why your mom can't come to the school play? To make excuses for why she's not at your birthday party?" Again, Mary felt each word like a physical blow. She had prepared for enemy interrogation, for psychological warfare, for the possibility of capture and torture. But nothing had prepared her for this conversation with her own daughter. "I did what I thought was right," Mary said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was protecting people. I was making the world safer for you." "For me?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "You were protecting everyone except me. You were making the world safer for everyone except your own family." The silence stretched between them, filled with 20 years of accumulated resentment and missed opportunities. Mary watched her daughter's face, seeing the child she remembered overlaid with the woman she'd failed to know. Sarah had Robert's gentle eyes, but they were harder now, protected by walls that Mary had inadvertently helped build. "Your father never told me how angry you were," Mary said finally. "Because he was protecting you, just like he protected me from the truth about how much your absence hurt." Sarah's voice cracked slightly. "He used to tell me stories about how brave you were, how important your work was. He made me proud of you even when I hated you." Mary felt tears threatening, a luxury she hadn't allowed herself in decades. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought providing for you, serving my country, was enough. Money isn't the same as being there, Mom. Neither is patriotism." Sarah pulled a tissue from her purse, dabbing at her eyes. "Do you know what my first memory of you is?" Mary shook her head, afraid to hear the answer. "I was 4 years old. You came home from a deployment, and I didn't recognize you. I hid behind Dad's legs because there was a stranger in our house claiming to be my mother." Sarah's voice was steady now, but the pain was evident. "You were so tan, so different from the pictures on the mantel. You tried to hug me, and I screamed." The memory hit Mary like a physical blow. She remembered that homecoming, remembered the confusion and hurt in her daughter's eyes, remembered the way Robert had gently coaxed Sarah forward while Mary stood in the doorway feeling like an intruder in her own home. "I remember that," Mary said quietly. "I brought you a doll from Germany. You wouldn't touch it." "I gave it to the neighbor's dog," Sarah said matter-of-factly. "He chewed it up in the backyard. I watched from my bedroom window and didn't feel bad about it at all." Mary closed her eyes, feeling the weight of decades of accumulated failures. "I failed you. I failed as a mother." "Yes, you did." Sarah's honesty was brutal but not cruel. "But Dad never let me hate you for it. He used to say that some people are called to serve in ways that require sacrifice, and that your sacrifice was being away from the people you loved most. He was a better person than I deserved. He was. But he's gone now, and it's just us." Sarah leaned forward, her expression softening slightly. "The question is, what do we do about it?" Mary looked at her daughter, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. She saw Robert's kindness tempered by a strength that was purely Sarah's own. She saw a woman who had learned to be independent because she'd had no choice, who had built a life without depending on a mother who was never there. "I don't know," Mary admitted. "I don't know how to be a mother to an adult daughter. I missed all the practice years." "Maybe that's the point," Sarah said. "Maybe we both need to figure out who we are to each other now, not who we should have been 20 years ago." Mary felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of the rigid control she'd maintained for so long. "I'd like that. I'd like to try." Sarah studied her mother's face, looking for signs of the woman who had chosen duty over family time and again. "It's not going to be easy. I have a lot of anger, Mom. A lot of hurt that I've been carrying around for most of my life. I understand. And I have a lot of guilt." Mary reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her daughter's hand. "But maybe we can carry it together instead of separately." For the first time since entering the coffee shop, Sarah smiled. It was tentative, fragile, but genuine. "Dad would have liked that." "He would have," Mary agreed. "He always believed in second chances. Even third and fourth chances," Sarah added, and for a moment, the tension between them eased. Mary took a breath, gathering courage for the question she'd been afraid to ask. "Tell me about your life." Your job, your friends, your dreams. I want to know who you've become. Sarah hesitated, then began to speak. She told Mary about her work as a pediatric nurse, about the children she cared for and the families she helped heal. She spoke about her small apartment with its garden full of vegetables, about the photography class she'd been taking, about her complicated relationship with a man named David who was patient with her trust issues. As Sarah talked, Mary listened with the same intensity she'd once brought to mission briefings. But this was different. This wasn't about gathering intelligence or assessing threats. This was about understanding the person her daughter had become despite Mary's absence, not because of her presence. "You sound happy," Mary said when Sarah finished. "Fulfilled." "I am, mostly. But there's always been this empty space, you know? This place where a mother should be." Sarah's voice was quiet. "I used to think I didn't need that anymore, that I'd grown past needing a mom. But when Dad got sick, when he was dying, I realized I still wanted you there. Not the commander, not the war hero. Just my mom." Mary felt tears she'd been holding back for months finally fall. "I'm here now. Are you? Really here or just between missions?" The question hung between them, heavy with the weight of past disappointments. Mary understood that this was the moment that would define their future relationship. She could offer reassurances, make promises about change, but Sarah had heard those before. Instead, Mary did something she'd never done before. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts until she found the number for General Morrison, her former commanding officer who had been trying to recruit her for consulting work. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked, watching her mother's fingers move across the screen. "Something I should have done a long time ago," Mary said, and pressed delete. She repeated the action with 3 other contacts, each one representing opportunities to return to the world of classified briefings and strategic planning. Finally, she placed the phone on the table between them. "I've been getting offers," Mary said. "Consulting work, advisory positions. High-level stuff that would make me feel important again." She looked directly at her daughter. "I'm saying no to all of them." Sarah stared at the phone, then at her mother. "Mom, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." Mary's voice carried the same certainty she'd once used to issue orders. "I've spent 30 years being Commander Thompson. I'd like to spend whatever time I have left learning to be Sarah's mom." The silence that followed was different from the tense quiet that had marked their earlier conversation. This was the silence of possibility, of 2 people standing at the edge of something new and uncertain but worth attempting. "It's going to be awkward," Sarah said finally. "I don't know how to have a mother at 32. And I don't know how to have an adult daughter I barely know," Mary replied. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe we can figure it out together." Sarah reached across the table and covered her mother's hand with her own. It was the first time they'd touched in months, and Mary felt the simple contact like a benediction. "Dad left me a letter," Sarah said softly. "He told me to give you a chance to be the mother you always wanted to be but never had time for." Mary squeezed her daughter's hand. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him I'd try. That's all I can promise right now." "That I'll try. That's all I can ask for," Mary replied. "That we both try." As they sat in the coffee shop, hands linked across the table, Mary felt something she hadn't experienced in decades: the possibility of redemption. Not through valor in battle or strategic victories, but through the more challenging work of rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be setbacks, moments of frustration, times when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But for the first time in her life, Mary Thompson was ready to fight the most important battle of her career, the one for her daughter's heart. Outside, the Portland morning was giving way to afternoon, and Mary realized she had nowhere else to be. For the first time in 30 years, she was exactly where she belonged.